The 5 greatest lands in Islamic history, the most powerful leaders in military history, the military geniuses that baffled the most powerful military scientists of the modern era, geniuses of war. When the Roman army besieged the Yarmouk Valley, it seemed that the Muslims were facing an invincible enemy, 200,000 soldiers against only 30,000. But at that moment, it was not weapons that would change the course of the battle, but the mind.
The Romans think we are few, and we will not change our numbers. But we will change what they see.
Will we get reinforcements? We are fighting an army like a flood, Abu al-Waleed.
Reinforcement will come from God Almighty. Tonight, I want the cavalry battalion to move from the far right to the left, and tomorrow, from the left to the rear. Whenever you pass...
But they are the same men, Abu al-Waleed.
Exactly, the same men. But in the eyes of the Romans, every night is a new army.
For successive nights, the visions were circling like ghosts. Fires were ignited from new places. Every evening, the Roman eyes from the tops of the hills see nothing but a growing army.
This is impossible. We did not see these banners yesterday. How many armies do these people have? My master, they are increasing every night. It seems that the whole city is supplying them with men.
Doubt crept into the bones of the Byzantine commanders. On the decisive day, they were defeated before the duel even began.
Today, there is no deception. Today, we let the sword speak.
The sun of the 4th day rose on a valley filled with soldiers. The Byzantines stood in confusion, looking around, while in front of them the Muslims lined up like mountains. The Byzantines, their hearts broken by what they had witnessed of the plot.
For honor, for freedom, we fight on.
They are no longer the same. The soldiers are retreating, the officers are quarreling, and leadership is lost.
Close your ranks. Stand firm. We are the Romans. We are the masters of this land.
My masters, how they are rushing in from every side. We have no way to exit.
The Byzantines are rushing towards the river. Some are falling, some are being trampled. Khalid's soldiers are shouting, "God is great." Arrows are picking off the survivors. In the end, the valley was filled with Byzantine corpses. Some drowned in the river, some fell by the sword, some were lost among the rocks. As the dust of battle rose, nothing remained of the Byzantine army but memories. The historical impact was opening the way for Muslims to the entire Levant. Damascus fell, followed by Homs and then Jerusalem. And from the smoke of battles, a new state was born, writing another chapter of glory. From Khalid ibn al-Waleed's deception at Yarmouk to Amr ibn al-As's plan in Egypt, Khalid deluded the Romans with an invincible army. But what if the enemy was fortified behind walls? Forts and water protected him. In the next plan, when Amr ibn al-As turned the Nile River into a silent weapon, he drowned the fortresses before swords could touch them. Not every victory, not every text is made with swords. Some victories are crafted in the trenches of the mind. In Egypt, where the Nile is the master of the earth, death and life, Amr ibn al-As stood in front of the impregnable fortress of Babylon, studying it with the eye of a thinking leader.
This fortress cannot be opened with weapons, but perhaps with the river.
Will we fight it with water?
Rather, will we let the water take care of the fortress?
And the following nights, hands moved silently on the banks of the Nile. Trenches were dug, channels were diverted, and barriers were erected. With each new dawn, the waters of the Nile rose higher around the walls of Babylon.
They have multiplied!
The Romans did not understand what was happening, but the soldiers on the walls cried out in astonishment. The water is rising!
And choked the fortress. We are surrounded from the outside, without any swords being raised.
What are those noises?
I don't like the smell. Smell coming from outside.
Get the men ready!
That night, Amr ibn al-As stood watching the fortress from afar. In his eyes was the gleam of a leader who won with wisdom. On a day without a fight, the the commanders of the fortress came out and presented the keys of Babylon to the Muslim army. Many think that victory is the sound of clashing swords, but the greatest victories make no noise. Reason triumphed over iron. That day marked the beginning of Egypt's conquest of the Great Gate to the land of the Nile, the jewel of the Islamic conquest in North Africa. But if you thought this was the height of cunning, wait until you see how Saladin became a weapon of thirst in the heart of Palestine. In the heart of the burning Palestinian summer, Saladin did not raise his sword first, but rather raised nature itself against them. The Battle of Hattin, where he used thirst as a weapon and mercy as a test. Saladin began to gradually withdraw his army towards the hills, away from the water sources. At the same time, he ordered the Crusaders to be cut off from every direction. He burned the fields and dried up the wells, leaving them only one road, the road of fire and thirst.
Sir, this is not a road. It is an open grave.
In the Crusader camp, the heat intensified and thirst ate away. The soldiers' lives were lost, the horses were fallen, the jars were empty, and the men were fighting for 3 days. In the heat of the day, the Crusaders were left without water. Their feet were worn out. Saladin's armies came out like a torrent from the heights. Arrows rained down swords. Thirst tore them apart, broken them, before the blows could reach them. The Crusaders fell one by one, searching more for water than for survival. At Hattin, the Valley of Thirst was transformed into a graveyard for the arrogant invaders. The king of Jerusalem was taken prisoner, led in humiliation among the men who had broken his pride. And amid the dust of battle, the banners of Islam rose on the road to Jerusalem. On that day, the whole world understood that if a nation's prestige falls, it can be restored with one blow if carried by a leader who knows how to make nature and iron his allies. Hattin wrote an immortal lesson in the pages of history that cunning can bring down what armies and kings could not. From the fire of Hattin to the humiliation of the Romans at Manzikert. At Hattin, the enemy collapsed with thirst. But what if he was defeated before the battle began in the next plan? When Alp Arslan feigned weakness, the castles of arrogance collapsed over the head of the Roman Empire. On the evening of August 25th, 171 AD, the night before the battle, Alp Arslan left his camp, deliberately wearing simple clothes that did not resemble the attire of leaders or the majesty of sultans. He wore a modest cloak, his sword hung at his waist without luster, and his beard covered a face that showed no signs of anger. He stood in front of Emperor Romanus IV's tent, his hands behind his back. His head was slightly lowered, and his voice was calm, as if he was asking for peace.
Romanos, son of Constantine, I come in peace, seeking dialogue.
At that moment, Romanus thought that this was a servile leader who came to ask for the lives of his people on the doorstep of Byzantium. The emperor raised his eyebrows in arrogance and gestured without even rising from his chair. One of the Roman generals laughed.
Is this the king of the Turks? Without a crown? Without gold? Without an army? Look at him, look at him. He came begging us to have mercy on him tomorrow, to leave him a few tents and horses.
Alp Arslan did not respond, but contented himself with a faint smile and an incomprehensible murmur. Then he left with quiet steps, leaving behind the illusion in the minds of the Romans that they had won the war before it began. But inwardly he was laughing, knowing full well that this fabricated surrender would intoxicate their arrogance and push them directly into the trap he had set for them that morning. At dawn on August 26th, Alp Arslan emerged with his soldiers from the hills of Manzikert, with the army of Emperor Romanus IV in front of him. The Romans, having seen Alp Arslan the night before begging for peace in the guise of humiliation, trusted their arrogance and believed that victory was only a matter of time. But what they did not realize was that this humiliation was the prelude to a well-planned trap drawn by the mind of the Seljuk commander. They positioned themselves in the shape of a wide crescent, Alp Arslan ordered his cavalry to position themselves in a wide crescent, with 2 light wings extending on the flanks, and his main army retreating slightly with each Roman advance. The deeper the Romans advanced, the more the Seljuk ranks appeared to collapse. Emboldened, the Romans advanced deeper. At noon, they entered the valley that Alp Arslan had specifically wanted. Then Alp Arslan gave his signal, and the Seljuk wings swooped down on both sides of the Byzantine army in a swift pincer movement. From the front, the infantry advance, raining arrows upon the Romans. From the sides, the cavalry closed the semicircle until they completely surrounded the Roman army. The Byzantines found themselves trapped in a narrow valley, with no room for escape or escaping the arrows that rained down upon them and the spears that tore apart their ranks.
My horse!
Even Emperor Romanus was captured by Alp Arslan's soldiers.
Today, you see the truth as it is.
With this stroke of genius, he destroyed the prestige of Byzantium in the east and opened a path for Muslims to the heart of Anatolia. Manzikert was an eternal lesson that intelligence is the most powerful weapon. This is how epics are written, and this is how arrogance falls to its knees. Manzikert was more than a military victory. There, the glory of the Seljuks was born, and the prestige of the Byzantines was shaken. The gates of Anatolia were open to Muslims, paving the way for the rise of an empire that would redraw the maps of the world, from Manzikert to Ain Jalut. In Manzikert, the Byzantines thought they were facing a surrendering leader. But what if we told you that the Tatars themselves, who set the world on fire, fell into the same trap? In the next plan, when Qutuz made them believe they were defeated, he besieged them from where they did not know. Imagine an overwhelming army that was invincible and invincible, devouring the land without mercy. The Tatar army, which had annihilated everything it faced, had reached the gates of Palestine. But in Ain Jalut, there was not just an army waiting for them, but a plan not written in war books, but inspired by the last gasp of a nation that wanted to live. On the outskirts of Ain Jalut stood Saif ad-Din Qutuz, the leader who carried the hope of the nation on his shoulders. After he finished his prayer, he turned to his commanders and said,
"My lord, the Tatars are invincible. How will we stand up to their torrent? We will not stand up, but rather retreat, making them believe we are weak. Then we will strike from where they do not expect."
At dawn the next day, the epic battle began. The Muslim army clashed with the Tatars, then withdrew in an organized manner towards the valleys. The Tatars thought that the Muslims had collapsed, so their commander, Qutuz, laughed mockingly and shouted, "Flee like rams."
But we're leading them into a trap from which they would not escape. Strike them from all sides. Show no mercy to those who show no mercy to anyone.
In the narrow passage, the 2 hidden wings closed in on the Tatars from both sides, while Qutuz closed in on them from the center, shouting,
"Leave them no way out."
The earth shook with the clash of swords. The Tatar banners caught fire, and Qutuz himself fell under the hooves of the horses. On that day, the Tatar wave stopped forever. At Ain Jalut, an epic of blood and reason was created that is still told today. We did not defeat them with swords alone, but with the power of God Almighty then, sacrifice, and faith. Thus, at Ain Jalut, the myth of the Tatars was shattered. Their leader Qutuz fell, And the Muslims proved that believing minds can stop the greatest floods. From here, the Levant and Egypt were saved from collapse. From here, hope returned to the hearts of the nation. From here, the Mamluks were established as a major power, and the true end of the Mongol myth began. Thus, over 5 immortal battles, we saw how the intelligence of the leaders was more deadly than the edge of swords. At Yarmouk, illusion was a recurring army that terrified the Romans. On the banks of the Nile, the water turned into a moat that swallowed the fortresses. And at Hattin, thirst made the enemies of God kneel before swords fell upon them. At Malazgird, feigned humility became a stab in the heart of Byzantine arrogance. At Ain Jalut, retreat turned into pincers that shattered the Tatar myth. One result united them all, a nation that holds faith. If faith and cunning are combined in it, it will have the upper hand, no matter how great its enemies. But one question remains, a question for you. Which of these 5 plans had the greatest impact on the course of Islamic history? Which do you think is the greatest lesson that should remain immortal, and why? Write your opinion and let us continue with the stories.